I was reached out to with this unique opportunity. They wanted to know my background. And as I was typing, I was like, wait, I've never actually told everyone this coherent story of how I got to where I am. This is the outline, the whole shebang of what our universe is. The background on my spiritual awakening and how I got here. So if I heard me just say these things, my first question would be, how do you know that and why do you think that? So I'm gonna give you my history, how I became the manifesting scientist, why I believe what I do, what I think our universe is. And I'm curious your guys' thoughts. My first spiritual awakening was in college, and I didn't know I was having a spiritual awakening. In college, I went through a really messy breakup. It was so devastating to me. I was so sad, and I was constantly on the verge of a mental breakdown. Like, it was so bad for me. And without boring you on all the details of that, the point is I was hysterical all of the time, and this was like my rock bottom. You know, class was a 5-minute walk from where I lived, and I couldn't get there without crying. I was so upset. On my walk to class, I would bombard myself with like positive affirmations. I would literally walk to class and be like, oh my gosh, Kelsey, your outfit looks great. Look, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's 70 degrees. The sun on your skin, that's so warm. That feels so good. Oh my God, look at that beautiful flower. Like, I would just say so many thoughts in my mind that I was filling my mind with just sheer volume, so I couldn't think any sad thoughts, and I was making them all positive. And I wasn't doing this for any purpose except not to cry. I was just trying to distract my mind enough to get into class without crying. I would also, I couldn't sleep at night because I was so hysterical. And everyone knows when you're trying to go to sleep and you lay down and stare at the ceiling, that's when all your anxieties come at their strongest, right? So again, I would fill my mind with, I would do a lot of guided meditations. I would just do hours of guided meditations. I would do multiple different ones, sometimes in a night, just to not get hysterical. I wasn't trying to even relax. I was just trying to not be at 100. One day I saw one of my old neighbors post on Facebook, and it was a book recommendation. And even at this time in college, which was a while ago, like, it was not cool to take book recommendations from old people in your life on Facebook, okay? But someone posted on Facebook that they had read this book and it really helps them. And I knew that person had gone through a pretty messy breakup, probably. They had a baby with a person who left them after the baby. So I was like, oh, okay, well, if this book could help her through that, it could probably help me through my breakup too. It was You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. I'm reading this book on my laptop. It's an excellent introductory book to manifestation and spirituality, and it did its job. This was my introduction to the whole New Age, I don't even like that word, but to my whole spiritual awakening. I realized the power of some of the habits I was already doing were actually really, really powerful techniques she recommended in the book, like saying positive affirmations, meditating. These were things I was already doing, but not with the intention to better myself, just with the intention to keep myself not from going crazy. In engineering school, I was majoring in chemical engineering in college. And in college, this was my junior year when I went through this breakup, and a lot of people get internships in the fall semester. This was now spring semester, and I felt late to get an internship. I felt like everyone had an internship except me. I felt like, what was I gonna do? This whole time up to this point, I had been stressing about where am I gonna get an internship, and you basically needed one to have the experience to get a really good job senior year. That was the culture. And one of the first things I ever manifested was, I was going through this breakup. I wanted to work in green energy. I wanted to get out of town. So I remember sitting by my door and trying out some of the meditation techniques in the book to manifest. And I was just sitting there trying to meditate, trying to get into trance, am I doing this right? Having all the things come up, but I really had the intention to manifest. Literally a few days later, I got this email from this old professor that I used to do research for the previous summer and winter, and I didn't even know he knew my name. He was so busy. He worked with so many students and undergrads. He had one of the biggest labs on all of campus. I did not think he even knew or remembered me, and I got this email forwarded basically to me. It was a forward of a forward of a forward of a forward of a forward, like a whole chain of emails from professors sending it to each other. And the bottom email was this guy, and he was saying hey, I work at a green energy fuel cell company. We're looking for a chemical engineering undergraduate intern. Do you know anyone? I got this email and I was like, oh my gosh, I really want this opportunity. I applied right away. And then I also emailed the guy at the bottom of the email like, hey, I just applied. I would love this internship. Here's my resume. And I was like, wow, what a perfect opportunity. It's out of state. It's the exact field I want to go in. And I practiced the manifestation techniques in this book, You Are a Badass. And what do you know? I got the internship. I was so excited, and that was probably the first thing I ever manifested. And it felt so powerful. So that was my first spiritual awakening. That was my first practice manifesting anything intentionally. Up to this point, I didn't really have a religious background. I didn't grow up religious. So when I got to engineering school, no one was religious and many people were atheists. Because again, this is science. And how dare science cross paths with spirituality? I remember specifically there was this girl on our floor who talked about this experience she had, like meeting God, and it was basically like a deer in headlight, like a deer in the headlights of her car, not just the phrase, a literal deer. And she's like, when I looked into the eyes of the deer, I saw God. And I remember my engineering friends making fun of her. Granted, she also was nuts and not for religious reasons. And this, in the eyes of my engineering friends, didn't help. And I remember them making fun of this experience, like, okay, you just looked at a deer and you saw God. I'm sharing this story because it shows that even if I was interested in spirituality or religion or manifestation or whatever at that time, I knew I'd be laughed out of school. I knew that was just something you don't bring up, you don't talk about. We believe in science, we love science. Everything can only be real if it's proven over and over and over by peer-reviewed published work and via the scientific method over and over again and stands the test of time, blah, blah, blah. So I was on board with them. I didn't have any religious background. I didn't have an interest to dive into it at that time. But as I was going through this traumatic experience, I naturally was drawn towards these higher powers and this manifestation book. Over the next few years, my spiritualism deepened as I continued to search for answers. After college, I got hired at the same company that hired me for that internship. I was super excited to work there. I really liked my internship, but I was never in my whole life excited to work. I remember asking my dad in high school, like, what if I don't want to work in a corporate job though? Like, what if I don't want to work? And my dad said, you'll like it when you get paid. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll try it out. So I had a nice paying job. It was an engineering job, but it was not what I wanted. I always, when I post on social media, when I share a quick post, I'll often say I hated my job, but that's not really the whole truth. I did not love my job, but when I looked at the big picture, I couldn't imagine myself doing this job for the next 40 years. Oftentimes, the majority of the time, I couldn't even imagine myself making it to the end of the year or to the end of the week or to the end of the day sometimes, okay? I remember calling my parents on multiple occasions being like, I'm just gonna quit. Like, tomorrow I have to quit. Like, I can't make it till Friday. I can't make it till the weekend. I hate it that much. So oftentimes I did hate it. So it's true, but what's more true is I hated other people's jobs more. I looked at what my boss was doing and his boss was doing in every department in the company, and I couldn't see any job I was excited about more than the job I was doing. My job was in research and development. So all day I got to be creative in this lab. I got to put on my podcasts or audiobooks or music or whatever, and I would jam out in the lab while I picked my projects. I ran my own experiments. I had so much autonomy for a 22-year-old and made a big impact in the research and development in the company. But I still didn't like it. And when I looked at other people's jobs, theirs were even worse. When they worked in manufacturing or they worked in other departments where they did other types of engineering, those didn't appeal to me either. And it wasn't the industry I was in. I was in the perfect spot. I wanted to work for green energy, and that's where I was. There was no other company, there was no position in the company that I could ever see myself doing. I didn't want a promotion. I didn't want anything. So the truth is I didn't like my job, but I also thought I was in the best job possible given all circumstances. I really thought this is the best job I could ever have. The parts I didn't like were the corporateness. I didn't like that I had to wake up at 6:30 every single day and then just like sit in traffic. I didn't like that. And my family lived in Maryland and this was Connecticut. And so I hated that I was limited by PTO for how much I could see my family. If I'm supposed to work like this for 40 years and so I never get to see my family again, besides on 15 vacation days, which I have to split going home to visit my family, plus going on actual vacation, taking random days off to like go to the dentist, like whatever, like how am I supposed to do this? So the corporate life just was a big fat no for me. It didn't make any sense. So I began to question, why as a society did we do it this way? And I began to think there had to be a better way to live. There had to be. Like, there's people who don't do this, right? One philosophy I have is this written as a law that we have to follow and there's no exceptions, or are there exceptions? For example, gravity is something you're not getting out of that one. Yes, we have anti-gravity machines, some people have gone to space, but pretty much I will just have to follow the rules of gravity. Okay? But something like working in a corporate job, well, there's lots of people who don't work in corporate jobs. There's lots of people who have retired in their 20s. There's people who have started their own businesses. There's people who have alternative careers, like being a singer and making it big or whatever. Like, a corporate job is just one of many, and it felt like what I had to do, but in reality, did I have to do it? No. And so I began to research everything I could to work myself out of a corporate job. The last thing I ever wanted to do, though, was delude myself into thinking, oh, well, I hate this job, so if I just get another job, then I'll be happy in it. I knew that wasn't going to be true because the things I hated about my job would exist at any job. Any corporate job was going to follow some kind of corporate structure. Yes, some companies have more PTO than others, but I'm still limited. Yes, some companies might have a 4-day schedule, but I'm still on a schedule. I wanted to work for me, for my own purposes, transforming lives. The point of bringing up my corporate job is it made me really think about, what do I want out of life? These are things I don't want out of life, but what do I want? What would my ideal life look like? Like, what would my daily schedule look like? What would I be doing in the mornings? What would I be doing in the afternoons? How much money would I be making? Who am I working with, and how am I providing value to this world? I became very curious about our purpose here and the meaning of life, who we are and why we're here. This job helped me ask myself the deeper questions, like, you only get one life, you can't do this for 40 years, so why are you here and what are you going to do instead? I knew I was in my job for the paycheck. I knew the only reason I was working was to get enough money so that I didn't have to work. That was it. I wanted financial freedom. And so I quickly began to learn about investing my money. And there was one stat that was like, well, if you save and invest 50% of your income, then you can retire in 17 years. And then I was like, wait, why do people work for so long? Why do people work for 45 years if you can just invest half your income and then you can literally cut your career in half? And if you want to work, sure, go for it. And I understand some people have like lower salaries and they can't save half. But the point is, if you are intentional about investing as much money as you can quickly shave years off of your retirement. And the younger you do it, the more years you can shave more easily. So I was like, why don't people do this? And I'm like, no one knows about it. Nobody knows about investing like this. And I got really excited to teach people. I felt like my friends needed to know. Like I felt like, people I went to school with, I couldn't think of one person who probably thought like this. And I thought everyone needed to know and everyone would find this valuable. So I started a side hustle teaching people how to grow their wealth. Here's the thing. As I was doing this money work, as I was talking about personal finance and working with clients and helping people, grow their financial freedom, because that's what we all want, right? We all want to like buy ourselves out of this rat race. What I noticed was a huge divide in people who succeeded and people who didn't. It's a super simple divide, but I noticed that people who thought they could succeed did, and people who didn't think they could succeed didn't. It is truly as simple as that. One time I was reading a magazine interview. I don't remember it was a long time ago, and it was with a personal trainer to Victoria's Secret model. The personal trainer was like, yeah, people are always like, oh my God, you must be literally so amazing at your job. These Victoria's Secret models have such amazing bodies. Like, how do you do that? And the personal trainer's like, no, he's like, I'm good at my job, but I have the easiest clients in the world. These are the most genetically gifted and self-motivated women in the world. They would do the work even if I wasn't here. I help guide them, but they already look stunning. I just help them along. So I noticed that really quickly with my personal finance clients. I noticed the clients who just believed they did. And my clients who had the best results, they were self-motivated. They were excited to see the end result. They believed they could, and then they did it. And then other people that never even became clients because they believed so little in themselves, they didn't really think they could succeed. Maybe they never saw money when they were growing up. Maybe they just had really negative viewpoints of the world. I don't know, but people who had a negative view of money didn't believe they could have it. They never grew in that aspect. They'd always find a way to self-sabotage, even if they didn't realize they were doing that. And one of the quickest ways they would self-sabotage is they would never even invest in the first place. Like, I saw so many more clients who had a nice income, had disposable income, had generally okay saving habits already, and they basically wanted me to help perfect and optimize. Or the people who had not as many good habits, those are the people who need money help the most. Those are the people who I could make the most impact in their lives. Those were the people who were too scared to get help because they didn't believe they could be helped. Those are the people who were too scared and always had the scarcity mindset, like, oh, money never comes in, so who am I to just pay this person to help me because money won't come back in. But those are the people who would have seen the most return on investment. They were just too scared. Mindset was the number one and really only divider. This solidified my belief that we truly do create our reality. We create our reality through conscious and unconscious thoughts, words, actions, beliefs, and faith. I really saw a huge difference between people who were excited and willing and ready to do the work and just did, and the people who were not. It was a huge mindset divide. Up to this point, my spirituality was more akin to personal development. For me, there just hadn't been enough proof in my life to have that higher power, faith, oh my gosh, I know God is always there type of spirituality. Then, my second spiritual awakening. I was listening to a podcast and someone mentioned the double slit experiment in quantum physics. I have made lots of content on this up to this point. I haven't talked about it in a while though, so if you're new here, let me know, and I'm happy to make brand new content as I have even greater understanding. But I was confused why they were talking about the double slit experiment because, again, I went to engineering school, I took physics. I had basically at this point shoved all the science I didn't need into the back of my mind because in school, the way I operated in engineering school was like, when the teacher's talking, when you're in class, when you're listening to the lecture, I'm basically auto-filtering, like, what do I need to know for the test? All that mattered was if I got a good grade on the test. I did not care about learning for the sake of learning. And we weren't taught. And it's also extremely likely we were taught and I just didn't pay attention, but I think we weren't taught the true implications of what a lot of this math and science means. For example, a quantum leap. In school, we would talk a lot about electron orbitals, electron energy levels, and basically a quantum leap is when an electron is in one energy level and then jumps to the next level. But the crazy thing about it is scientists never ever catch it in between levels. It's just at one level and then like instantly in the next level once it gains enough energy. That's it. It's never caught traveling to the next level. So how does it get there? Like, that's kind of crazy. But in school, what we did was we would simply just calculate how much energy, an electron starts at this level. How much energy does it need to get to this level? Things like that. Like, we just did the math behind it. We did not talk about the impact. The electron is not ever seen traveling. The electron is here and then instantly here. So what the heck is happening in the background? How could that possibly be true? That's mind-blowing. We never talked about that. We just calculated this. That's why when I see comments on TikTok, when I talk about more scientific concepts, the electrons doing that, we must all be interconnected. Or, I make a conclusion like that. A lot of people will comment and say, that's pseudoscience, that's not true. well, it's not true. We don't know. And the problem is scientists, real scientists, not the TikTok people, but also the TikTok people, don't think about the implications. They don't think about the real world implications. They're just doing the calculations to get the answer they're looking for. There's not a lot of discussion about what could be happening, because if you can't provide like a testable method, then it doesn't count as science in a lot of scientists' eyes. And when a lot of scientists in academia propose these more wild ideas, both electrons aren't actually separate entities at all, but they're simply facets or fractals of one bigger truth. The point of what I'm trying to say is, in school, in academia, there's not a lot of thought behind the meaning of what's happening. It's just bing, bang, boom, calculated, done. And that mindset, I think, is an absolute disservice. And me, as going through it, I lived in that mindset for a lot of years. So I'm ridiculing myself. Like, I know that's the mindset because I went through it. And now my consciousness was now expanded to see new possibilities in things I previously had a background in. So I was able to, from this new perspective, revisit a lot of the science that I already had learned and think about, oh, this actually has meaning. This wasn't just memorizing a calculation and then regurgitating it on a piece of paper again. Hey, oh, wow, this is a fundamental key part to our universe. And I got obsessed with revisiting all of the old science, and I was shocked, really, at how even the most basic quantum physics teaches us insane truths about our reality. My first spiritual awakening, I felt like I woke up from being asleep. I was just introduced to, oh, manifesting, that's good, personal development, set goals, hit them, great. Now I was cracked open to, wait, what is our universe? What is out there? What is everything? What do you mean matter isn't solid? What do you mean everything exists as a potential? How can that possibly be true? Starting with the double slit experiment and going down many other quantum physics rabbit holes, I have since gone down many rabbit holes around many topics, and my consciousness is vastly expanding and expanding. People are not ready to hear information that their consciousness is not awakened to. When I heard about the double slit experiment the first time in college, my consciousness was not ready to hear the truth about it. And then at this point, I had a much more open mind, and I was ready to understand the implications of it. So again, when I get all these comments of people, that's not what it means, your consciousness isn't ready for the truth. That's the truth. And there's nothing I can do to help those people except continue to post, continue to plant the seed, continue to shine my light and share the truth, because if no one talks about it this way, then no one will ever know the truth this way. So what is the universe? Here is my ideology of what we live in. My first belief is to be open to new beliefs. Based on all of the evidence I have at this moment in time, this is what I believe to be true. But I only got here based on my core belief of always seek the truth. I'm not trying to be right. I don't care if I'm right. I just like discussing these ideas. And based on all the evidence that I have gathered and I have experienced, this is what I think has to be true. But my core belief is to always be open to new beliefs. So tomorrow or any given moment, I could be provided with a whole new set of undeniable evidence, and then I would be excited to change my beliefs. That's what true science should be, the discovery of the unknown and discovering new ideas. So I'll let you know what I think, but if a year from now I make an updated video and it's totally different, I'm open to that possibility. So the first thing is, I am quite sure our 3D reality that we experience is an illusion. It can't be real. On no level is what we see objective reality. Every single source says it's not real. And when I say source, I mean biology, neuroscience, quantum physics, spirituality, ancient cultures. There's everything, like sociology, everything says this is not real. For example, in quantum physics, the farther you zoom in on reality, like, okay, if you look at my arm, it looks like an arm. And then if you zoom in more, you'll see the muscles and the tendons and the blood, okay, and the bone. You zoom in on the bone, for example, and then you'll see cells and all the cells moving in your body, and then you zoom in more, and then you'll see those cells are made of atoms, and then in the atom, you'll see electrons, protons, neutrons. We keep zooming in, and there's a new layer. So we get to biology, molecular biology, physics, quantum physics, right? Like that's what we're looking at when we're zooming in on all those layers. And when we get to the quantum physics level, when you keep zooming in far enough beyond the atom, beyond the proton, and you get to sub-Planck length, you realize everything is mucky. Sub-Planck length, everything is mucky. We cannot possibly detect. We can't measure below there. We have no idea what's there. So at the most fundamental, like lowest point of our reality, we can't even determine what's there. And that would be weird. You should always be able to see what's there if it was real. If you zoomed in on the subatomic scale of everything in this room, right now on the macro scale, it looks like there's differentiation. Me, this chair, this TV, whatever. But if you zoom in, we're all the same building blocks. We're like, it's all electrons, it's all protons. It's not like the electrons in me are separate from the chair. No, they're all one and the same. Also, when you zoom in on that level, you see that an atom is 99.9999% empty space. So not only is none of this matter solid, it's also not different from each other on the subatomic level. So somewhere it becomes distinguishable, but it can't be ultimate reality that me and you, or me in that chair, or all of us are separate from each other, and this is fundamentally real because as we zoom in, we're all made of the same stuff. It's like if I made out of Play-Doh a boy and a girl, and they seem separate, but at the end of the day, they're both a Play-Doh. Yes, they're in separate bodies right now, but then also in quantum physics, in the double slit experiment, we know there's two separate worlds. The one after we measure it, where the world is what it is, everything's distinguished, everything's different, has its own properties, and pre-observation, where when no one is looking at something and no one has observed a thing, it has no properties. It's a wave-like particle. It's a wave. It's everywhere. It has no locality in space or time. It has no predictable properties. It has possibilities. It has potential, but that's it. Our world is literally just potential. It's just wave function. It's only possibility at its most fundamental level. And it appears as if we live in a reality post-observation where things suddenly take form. But how can you dare say that's 100% real reality when we know there's all these other possibilities just waiting for us to explore? Beyond quantum physics, let's zoom out into really, really big, the cosmos, the planets. So when physicists were doing calculations on black holes, they found every time they went to use 3 dimensions to calculate the volume of a black hole, they couldn't. The third dimension didn't make the math work. They realized it did work, however, when they used 2 dimensions. Now, how would that possibly make sense? If we lived in an actual real reality, why could you not calculate it? They found that the calculations that make sense are when it's a 3D projection of a 2D reality, which is what the holographic principle is. Our universe may be a hologram because of these calculations on black holes. One definition of a hologram is interacting energy fields. One aspect of a hologram is it can really only know itself based on its opposite. I can make a video dissecting holograms, why it could make sense, why it does make sense. We might live in a holographic universe, but the calculations point that way. The only evidence we have that it's not a hologram is stuff seems solid. But we know stuff's not solid. We know it's 99.99% empty space. So all the evidence is just pointing towards our reality has to on some level be an illusion. When we look at neuroscience, we know that our brain constructs our reality. Our brain and our vision both literally fill in the gaps of our reality when it can't see. We have a blind spot in our retina. We know this, but when we look around, it doesn't feel like there's a blind spot. Yeah, it's because our brain fills in the gap. You can Google optical illusions where, you look at one dot and then you focus on a thing over here and it disappears when it's moving because you have a blind spot in your eye. But normally when there's patterns in our world, your brain just fills in the gaps based on what it thinks should be there. Same with our subconscious, our experiences. It builds our conscious projection of self based off memories, experiences, beliefs, thoughts, feelings. We know our reality is constructed by this on a biological level. So if all of this is pointing to there's no way this is objective reality what we're seeing. I also really love the work of Donald Hoffman, a neuroscientist, and he has an interface theory of perception, that one way to think about our universe is like the interface of a desktop. And the interface of the desktop is not the ultimate truth of the computer, right? When you drag an icon to the trash can, that you delete that icon, but the trash can's not literally real. It's just an icon. It's just a subjective reality. It's just an icon there to help us navigate real objective reality, which is, you know, the binary code, the wires in the computer, like all this stuff going on behind the scenes. That's what that trash can is representing. One thing I know to be true is every time I go to explain, oh, well, our reality kind of works like this, and think of an analogy, the analogy is almost always a video game. It's almost always The Sims, because that's the only game I play. Or how I just told you about the desktop interface. It's almost always some aspect of virtuality. And I don't know if it's because we live in a simulation, which could be true, a lot of evidence points that way, or if it's because our human brains can only process so much and technology has to mimic how the universe already works. And as technology improves, it just gives us more of a language to explain how the universe works. But inside our cells, inside our DNA, we already have inside our higher self, we already know what the universe is. So on some collective consciousness, on some subconscious level, maybe we're just interpreting that information and projecting it into our technology. I don't know what objective reality is, but I do know this reality is fake. Is our universe infinite? And if it's infinite, that's weird, right? How could our universe be infinity? How could it not end? If it doesn't end, what does that even mean? But if our universe is finite, what does that mean? If our universe is finite, then what's on the outside of our universe? Both questions are absolutely mind-boggling. And what I believe to be true is our infinite is finite and there's something on the outside of it. And what I believe is on the outside of it is pure consciousness. And I believe pure consciousness stems our universe, and our universe is emergent of that consciousness. I believe our human body, our biological meat suit, is simply a portal for tiny aspects of this pure consciousness to work through. And I believe our reality is simply a playground or a simulation, if you will, but you don't need to think of it in terms of a computer, just an environment for this pure consciousness to experience things. Like where pure consciousness resides, there is no opposite. There is only the pureness of the consciousness. It can't do things because it doesn't have the interacting energy fields like a hologram. It doesn't have the differences, like the polarities that we experience here on Earth. It only has its pureness. And I believe on Earth, our soul comes here. Our soul is part of that consciousness to experience and to create and to build and to play and to learn about what we are through what we are not, and to live our highest truth through our highest self and keep elevating our consciousness that way. I believe we are all interconnected, and beyond all else, I believe we have full power to create our reality. I believe on every level we create our reality. I believe we are available for a certain energetic range of outcomes, and things manifest in our lives. And when certain events happen, it is up to us to choose who we get to be in relation to that event. When this tragedy happens, who am I? What do I create out of it? And I believe we keep leveling up and leveling up our soul. And we're here to have fun and have humor and play, and we're not meant to be in a box. We're not meant to play it safe. I don't think we are. Inside of my course, Unlock the Universe, we talk a lot more about different models of the universe. We talk a lot more about the true creation power you have. We talk a lot more about a lot of these topics here, the 0-point field, which I didn't even mention. There's a lot to our universe. These are just some broad points that I wanted to cover so you understand where I'm coming from. I think a lot of my content, some of it's really more spiritual, some of it's more practical, some of it's more scientific, and I wanted a place to kind of merge all of them and so you understand me. And I was writing this ideology out. I didn't realize this about myself till like last week. My spiritual awakenings contain almost no spirituality. Did you catch that when you were listening to them? When I hear other people share their spiritual awakening, it was always like, I heard God's voice boom through my ears, or I just heard a voice, or, you know, I had this experience that I couldn't explain, and it's always some mystical thing. And I've always wanted a mystical experience, so it's not from lack of want. But as I was writing this, I felt I understood why I never had that kind of mystical experience. And it's because when other people share those earlier in my life, when I had no spiritual background, I wanted to believe them, but there was always that skeptic in me searching for the doubt, searching for the falseness, being like, is that true? And it never sold me. But I realized in my spiritual awakenings, there's almost no spirituality or contact with higher beings or whatever, because my purpose on this earth is to study spirituality as a topic. I think this was by design. My skepticism is my strength, because I am able to overturn every single rock, because no beliefs were inherent in me. My parents didn't raise me with any beliefs, so I didn't have anything to break down. I was a fresh young chicken exploring the world. And so when I heard a spiritual concept, I had a blank slate of what that could mean for me, and I get to turn over every rock, discover the science, discover information from all different types of sources. I could analyze other people's experiences rather than have such a strong experience myself that it blinded me to certain truths that other people were sharing. And if you had a strong spiritual experience and that was your awakening, I'm not discounting it. I'm saying that's awesome, and you are serving a lot of people with that, and it was obviously true for you. Mine came in a different way because I need to teach other people who are on the opposite side of the spectrum, and at least plant the seed and show that there's more. And through science, through ancient cultures, through spirituality, through books, through text, through all this information, it all kind of points to these same truths, to the point where we can't ignore them. I know my role here is the manifesting scientist, because my role is to be on this journey, to decode the universe, to unlock our powers from a place of, no, here's all the evidence, so it has to be true, so we can't not live our truth. So yeah, I realized I had a lot more to say about the universe. That might have to be a whole nother video. I could easily expand on that, but those are my top beliefs. The point is, you have full creation power. You truly create your reality with every moment of every day. Right now, you get to take responsibility for your future, change your thoughts, change your actions, change your beliefs, change your reality. I believe on every level, fundamentally, you create everything you experience, and everything is simply a reflection of you and an aspect of self. If you have any questions, comment them, help guide me. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this spiritual awakening help you guys if you have questions on manifestation. That's my job. That's what I'm here for. That's all I do. Answer questions on how manifestation can be true, how we can use it in our lives, and how we can create our reality. So thank you guys for being here. Subscribe, like, comment. I'm so excited to continue this discussion.